Hi there, I'm Scott, and this is Tangents. Well, today my word is maskless. And the reason I want to talk about this is it's one of these things. I remember years ago, I was living in Paris, and I had a roommate who was a nice guy. I used to go climbing with him, enjoyed his company. I had to eventually, I had a 1-year visa to stay there. And about 3 months early, I just felt compelled to leave. And the reason for this was just little things that were not individually that big of a deal. And it's one of these things that's actually annoying because if you describe the situation, even in my own mind, I'm sitting here going like, well, that doesn't sound like that much. And a friend who we used to climb with as well said, I was explaining this to him, and I feel like I'm not just being this bothered by this stuff. It was just stuff like leaving, every time I wanted to cook anything, there were dirty dishes in the sink, which I didn't want to touch because it was gross, Every time, and they were not mine, just to be clear. Often, at one point I had a pretty nice pan, and I told him, you guys can use that, he and his girlfriend, which was fine. I have no objection to. I didn't, I meant it when I said it. But every time I wanted to use it, it was dirty in the sink. So I had to clean up their shit in order to use my pan. And then I would, after I used it, just as a matter of protocol, as a matter of course, I clean up my own shit because the next time I use it, I don't want to be dealing with a nasty pan that has caked on gross shit on it. And eventually, I finally started just leaving the pan in my room because I didn't want to deal with that. And then there were other things, like we had one restroom, and he and his girlfriend would be in there for like an hour or two. Again, I totally understand. I don't begrudge people. Whatever you're going to do in there, by all means. But I've just come back home and I have to pee. Like I can't, it's not like you can just find a public restroom like next door. It's a big deal to find a place to pee. I have a restroom in my place and I can't use it. And little stuff like this just sort of added up cumulatively. And so our friend John, well, I don't even, probably completely botching his name. Which is sad because it's not a complicated name. It's not John, it's like Jan. Anyway, our friend we're talking at the Rock Jam, and he's like, well, it's like somebody flicking you in the forehead. Yeah, individual flick, it's annoying, but it's not that big of a deal. But if somebody keeps flicking you and they keep flicking you long enough, at a certain point you're like, what the fuck, stop it, come on, what the fuck? And this is how I feel right now about the maskless. This is why I'm compelled to make this video right now. This is why I've picked this as my topic. It's why I even have the energy today when I have like a bunch of other shit to do. It's the 6th, Sunday the 6th of December, 2020. I have a bunch of stuff that I want to do today. And I don't really need to be spending however long recording this and then time putting it together, all this stuff. But I can't fucking take it. I live in Gilbert, Arizona, and I will admit, and judge me or not, I go walking around the neighborhood without a mask, with some frequency. But I do it in a way, the way that I justify this to myself is if I see somebody coming across the street, I get way the fuck away from them. And basically in the neighborhood, I can avoid them. I can stay quite a distance away. Even this, I'm on the fence of whether or not it's the right thing to do. I definitely don't feel great about it. I feel like wearing a mask, even in these circumstances, is better. But what I really want to talk about is I've been walking to Dutch Brothers. Probably mentioned this in an earlier one, but just walking there every morning, get my coffee, walk back. and which is a kind of nice thing to do. And actually, the one thing that, just a weird aside, but in Paris, when I lived in Montrouge, which is just south of Périphérique, which is this sort of road that goes around the city, we were like 5-minute walk outside of the city, outside of there. So at this time, I wasn't really living in Paris proper, but effectively close enough. I lived there, and every morning, except for I think it was Tuesday when they were closed, every morning I'd go to this patisserie nearby, and I'd get a pain au chocolat, walk back, make my coffee at home, which was this vacuum-packed, pre-ground stuff that was awesome. I mean, it honestly tasted better than the fresh ground stuff that I do here sometimes. But anyway, would do that. It tasted so good that I brought several packs of it home. For some reason, does not seem to exist here, and doesn't seem to, I don't know why it is a thing that can't be done here, but it was awesome. But I would do that, and during that walk, which was a shorter walk, to be sure, it was like a 15-minute walk, maybe 10-minute walk to the patisserie. And while you're walking through Paris and the outlying areas, even in the kind of shittier neighborhoods, there's interesting stuff to look at. There's stuff that's kind of, nice. And when you walk through the really nice parts of the city, it's fucking awesome. I mean, if you go back to, I think it was Napoleon the Third, who had Haussmann sort of re-architect the city. It'd be funny if I'm saying that and it's like completely wrong. I think it's true, but my memory, who knows, especially for names. But when you go back there, this is sort of what made the city look and feel like it does today. And it's awesome. I mean, there are things certainly which are not ideal. If you have limited mobility, my mom was there, and a lot of the metro stations are not handicap friendly. And not that my mom is handicapped, but walking up a bunch of stairs, especially if they're slick and wet and you're older, not great. She never slipped there, but it was a constant concern. And some of these places, like it's a lot of steps. She's in good shape, and she was in better shape then, but it's still, like a lot of steps. It was a lot of steps for me, and I like running up the stairs. For a random person, you can understand this is not ideal. But that being said, and then you go to these, most of these apartment buildings, they would have like the little, it's very cute, but not practical, elevator, if even that. And then I would always just take the stairs because, but they had the elevator. It was kind of nice. But not all of them did. Not really ideal for somebody with any kind of, if you sprained your ankle. I sprained my ankle years ago. As much as I love going up and down the stairs, under that circumstance, if I lived there, it would have been really fucking unpleasant. But when you're doing well, you can walk around. It's very nice. It's lovely. It's just cute. Here, everything is spread out, but we still have. It's a kind of weird combination. If you look at a map, go to Google Maps or something, look at Gilbert, and you'll see it's just endless suburban sprawl. Houses that are packed, next to each other for the most part. So everybody has neighbors. You don't really have like the living in the country feel. So you still have that downside from a city. You don't have people necessarily sharing your walls. That's a slight improvement, but yeah. And you don't have people maybe upstairs or downstairs, but you have neighbors. You have people doing annoying shit right next to you. But at the same time, you can walk for 45 minutes here and just see nothing particularly interesting or, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's beauty in almost everything. You can find things that are nice almost anywhere, but it's not the same. It's just, if you put yourself in a random part of Paris, and not just Paris, you put yourself in a random part of New York, it looks nice. There's interesting, cool stuff there. You put yourself in a random part of Phoenix, you know, there are a couple of places that are kind of nice to walk around, but for the most part, you're just walking for a very long time. And even if you're walking for the same, you know, like I would walk across the city all the time when I lived there. Now that I live here, walking the same distance, you just pass so much less stuff and it's so much less interesting. So anyway, totally beside the point. I'm in Gilbert, and which not entirely irrelevant. This is a fairly Republican area. Andy Biggs, if you probably know who he is, but if you don't know who he is, look him up. Raging fucking asshole. If you look at that, he keeps getting reelected here. It says something about the people who live here. And a lot of them also are, I don't know, I guess you would say like church friendly. So they're people who have this sort of facade, this veneer of smiling and friendly and giant air quotes nice. But when you actually get down to it, they're basically, you know, fundamentally kind of saying fuck you. This is, to be fair, part of this is in my head, although I don't think it's an unreasonable thing to have in my head. When I see people walking in a crowded place or in an enclosed space, someplace, you know, like yesterday, go to the grocery store, and there's a couple not wearing fucking masks. The store has a mask policy. Nobody's saying shit to these two people. Every time I go to the grocery store, there's somebody in there not wearing a mask. And the people there say fuck all to them every damn time. And you know, I'm not saying that I expect this to be like a great high risk, but it's just the implication to me. I'm wearing my mask not because it protects me, but because it protects you. You know, I'm spraying shit while I'm breathing, if I'm talking, certainly while I'm talking, I'm spraying mist out. Now, as far as I know, I'm healthy, I'm not sick, but I could easily be an asymptomatic carrier, spraying stuff unwittingly contaminating the world. Put the fucking mask on and you contain most of that. When I put my mask on, if you're spraying shit, I can still breathe it in. So my mask is for you, your mask is for me. Not wearing a mask under those circumstances and in places where you're going to be in close proximity to people, as I see it, is basically a fuck you. Now, and in fact, I would say it's even worse than that sort of flicking the finger in your forehead thing, because leaving the dishes in the sink, it's a minor fuck you. I mean, I do read it that way, but it's also kind of like, you can kind of understand. It's not, it's just laziness. I'm not excusing it by any means, but I can understand it. Not wearing the fucking mask is it's almost an aggressive fuck you to everyone else. And I understand, okay, you live in a culture where everybody's like, oh, these chicken shit liberals with they're cowards and they have to wear them, fuck you. Fuck you and fuck you. Sitting there saying, again, I'm not wearing my mask because I'm afraid I'm gonna get sick. I'm wearing my mask because I don't wanna get you sick. You not wearing your mask isn't telling me you're this brave motherfucker who's not going to get sick or you don't give a shit. It's telling me that you don't give a fuck if you're sick or unwittingly spraying shit all over the rest of the planet. You're getting other people infected. And okay, maybe you don't have it, but maybe you do. Unless you're getting tested regularly, I'd say it's a fucking realistic possibility. Especially now, when you look at the number of people who have it. They just had Thanksgiving. People traveled all over the fucking country, and the numbers were already up. And you start looking at this shit and you're like, and the thing that kills me about this, if this was like, okay, this is just the way things are going to be for the foreseeable future, we're going to be like this for a decade. Okay, I get, you sort of go, we're going to be like this for a decade. Let's just fucking hunker down and get it over with and fuck it. I get that. I don't like it, but I get it. giant fucking butt, there are multiple vaccines coming out in the near future that all look very promising, all have very high effectiveness, basically no side effects, like coming out soon. This is something that, I wouldn't say that we're through it by any means, but I do think next Thanksgiving, if you want to go visit your family next holiday season, next Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever, if you want to go visit your family, you'll be able to do it. And, you won't have to deal with this shit. But instead, people are just like, fuck it. We're just going to wear no mask. We're just going to go hang out with our families. And especially, like, the thing that kills me here, I know people who have, like, elderly family members who, again, they're, like, immersed in this crazy fucking bubble. But they're actually actively pushing to have their kids or their in-laws come and visit them for the holidays. And I look at this and I'm like, and these are people who have, like, if they get it, their odds of getting very sick and potentially dying are much higher than, like 5-10% kind of people. Much higher than the average population. And yet they're pushing to have people expose them. And I get it. Yeah, okay, you're older. Maybe you don't have that many holiday seasons left. But at the same time, it's better to have one less than to have all of them eliminated, It's better to take the chance that, okay, this could be the last one, but probably not, versus, okay, I'm going to take a real roll of the dice and push people to come here and expose me, which could kill me badly. And not only are you getting killed badly, but now you've got relatives who surely love and care about you, who've just gotten you sick and basically killed you. They're responsible for your fucking death. Statistically, it's a certainty that that's going to happen to a lot of people. And I would feel terrible. I would love to go visit my mom, but I don't want to get her sick. I don't want to risk it. And I don't think it's worth it. And I know certainly, like, okay, it's a low probability that if I went there and I got her sick and then, she didn't make it, very unlikely. But if it happened, I couldn't fucking forgive myself, So you're pushing people who care about you to do this. It's kind of, it's just warped. It's just warped. And I know, I get, okay, you have certain ideas about, like, what, it's like, oh, things are a certain way. And it's because of the environment you're immersed in. I get it. But I don't find that an excuse. I don't think that being just completely steeped in this, like, Fox News bubble, and I call it that, I guess really now it's gone like a step further to the point where, it's kind of a fucked up thing, but Fox News has some attempt to, like, kind of get the horses back in the barn, but it doesn't matter because they've already got this shit out there. And now there are other people who've taken up the mantle and gone even a step further. So even if Fox News just presented, like, completely grounded reality, which they're not, but if they did, it wouldn't fucking matter because people have moved on to a bunch of crazy shit on YouTube and other things. And, I'm honestly very concerned about where we go from here as a society, as a civilization. You have people, I walk around my neighborhood. Now, a lot of the Trump signs have come down. I will say that. But the really crazy houses, the houses with, like, there's one that I pass when I'm getting my coffee that had like 50 Trump signs. And I'm not really exaggerating. Like fucking Looney Tunes. Now, about a week ago, they took down maybe half of them. So they still have an insane number of Trump signs, but it's gone down a little bit, which is kind of weird. I don't know what's going on there. Maybe they're slowly, like, reeling it in. But a lot of the Trump houses that I see still have fucking Trump signs. I still see trucks every day with the Trump flag and the US flag. It's funny how the US flag has just become this, this is not at all a new thing, but the US flag might as well be a fucking Confederate flag. If you see a truck flying, well, if you see a truck flying a flag, even that alone, just, you know, I don't know. I look at that just as, you know, like letting it all hang out. I'm an asshole, fuck the world, you know? That's really how I read it. And especially, I mean, it's a weird thing. It's you're saying fuck yourself too, because the fuel economy cost of, you know, and I know you don't give a shit about the environment. You don't give a shit about how much you're paying for gas. That's clear. I get it. But at the same time, you know, you're spending 5% more on gas now because you've got a fucking flag on your truck. You're probably putting a lot of people at risk because if anything happens and, you know, like imagine you're on the freeway and your flag goes flying off and hits some other car in the windshield. Now they can't fucking see. That's not gonna end well. And yeah, I mean, it's lucky that this kind of shit doesn't happen all the time. And you see this and it's just like, you know, just a matter of course, this is just normal. I walk around the neighborhood, I see, you know, houses surrounded with these, I don't even want to say it because it's so fucked up, but blue and giant air quotes, lives matter signs, and the flags and all this kind of stuff. The thin blue line flag. And I gotta tell you, there's no such fucking thing as a blue life, you know? I've talked about this all the fucking time. I feel like I'm saying fucking every other word. I'm sorry about that, but it's just like I'm incensed about this stuff. Being a cop is a choice. If you're born black, you're born black. Now, granted, there are people who kind of, you know, decide to be black and then, you know, it's not how society sees them, but they push that and then they're kind of, you know, yeah. There have been a shocking number of people who we've found out, you know, it's a professor who claimed she was that and then, oh, well, actually, no. And, you know, a little out there. Don't want to go down that path, but for the most part, ascribed trait versus achieved trait. Being a cop is something you've chosen to do. And the thing about being a cop, and I don't want to rehash my ACAB video, but being a cop, even if you go in with good intentions, basically means you're going to get immersed in this environment where you have two options as a cop. You go in, you really want to fix things, you really want to change things, but now you have all of your superiors, you have the cop union, all these people pushing you not to say anything. While you're in there, you're becoming sort of subsumed into this culture, into this toxic milieu of just, I don't know, you're just blending into the stew, right? And whatever character you might have had slowly is getting withered away. Now, you could try to stand up and do something, but the consequences to you are going to be pretty fucking dire. Or you could just quit. And honestly, like, I mean, this is why, and again, I don't want to rehash that. I think I've made my point there, but I really don't think that there's a viable plan other than just like hitting a hard reboot on police forces. I see people talking so much about reform and all of these kinds of things. In order to make this kind of toxic stew better, I can't imagine anything short of just, you know, purge the whole thing, clean everything up, set up a new system with them. And even if you don't want to abolish the police, let's say you want a police force. Basically, like, kill the existing one, create a new parallel one, new employment contracts where people actually have fucking consequences, you know, better organizational structure and all this kind of stuff. And then rehire people after a very thorough vetting process and filter that stuff out. Maybe then that would work. But if you're trying to take the existing system and make it better, it's just pouring, you know, you have fetid water and okay, you can add more water to that, but unless you're getting rid of the source of contamination, all the water you put in is now contaminated. That's pretty much the way it works. It's not something that magically gets fixed. So anyway, I don't necessarily want to blather on, about another topic today, or, I think that's probably pretty much there. But the maskless fucking thing, I can't stand it. And every time I see people doing it, it used to be like I would see people and I'd kind of like, okay, I get it. I'm gonna stay away from you, but I get it. And I'm getting to the point where I'm gonna go fucking full like Larry David on people. I'm like, I'm like at the fucking brink because I see these people and I'm just like, motherfucker, what the fuck? Just wear your fucking mask. And the thing that kills me, just to tie a little bow on this, is it's such a little ask. It's not like I'm asking you to put your leg behind your head or do something that is actually a challenge. Putting on a fucking mask or a bandana or whatever the fuck, very low effort. And I'm sorry, even, I have an N95 or a set of N95 like decent masks that provide a little bit more protection. Those things do restrict airflow. And, I wouldn't want to run in them or go biking in them. But I have a lot of other masks which are like decent kind of surgical masks that I can, basically breathe the same as if I'm just breathing. It's actually to the point where I just can't accept people not wearing this kind of shit. Now, I will say, obviously, when this stuff happened at first, I mean, if you imagine like living in a functional government, a functional society, when this stuff happens, you send everybody fucking masks and send them like a monthly kit to do that. You tell them, like, be fucking patriotic, protect everybody else. I'm protecting you, you're protecting me. We're all in this shit together. America, we can do this. And that would be what you would expect. If you have things where, and the thing also that kills me about all this shit, you have this situation where there's so little relief for regular people that a lot of people just absolutely need to work. Like, they're in a position where they can't not work, right? These are not people who, like, I'm very lucky. I can work from home. I was already working from home, actually. I mean, I had people coming in doing work here, but I was basically working from home. And the transition from that to what we're doing now, pretty fucking smooth. And there are certainly things where, like, being in person is nicer and more efficient. If you want people to use lab equipment, a little bit of a pain in the ass if they don't have it at their place. But nonetheless, we're functioning quite well under these circumstances. Shockingly well. A lot of people can't do that. A lot of people, like, if you're a waiter, if you're a bartender, what the fuck are you gonna do? You can't bartend remotely. They don't have telepresence robots yet that let you do that. And so your choices are basically not have any income, or go to work and expose yourself, expose people around you, take a lot of risks. Now, if you imagine a better solution, you take people in that situation and you just say, and I mean, I'm saying this as though it wasn't obvious. It's fucking obvious. A lot of people have said it because it's fucking obvious and it's the right thing to do. Take people in that situation. You don't have rent. Your rent is on pause. It's not that your rent is going to be due, retroactively. It's just frozen. A lot of your utilities, they're just frozen. You don't have to pay electricity. Now, I'm not saying you could double your electricity usage, but within reasonable bounds, all of your utilities, they're just on hold. They're just frozen. You're still getting them, but you're not paying them. If you have a house, you have a mortgage, or if you have houses that you're renting, your mortgages are frozen. Now that does mean that, okay, instead of 30 years, maybe it's 31 years, but you're getting a year off. You're getting a year, ideally with no interest accruing, but also where you're just not paying anything. And if you do this, a lot of these things have basically no cost to them. Now, paying utilities, you have to somehow cover, obviously. Freezing mortgages and rents, if I'm a landlord Freezing the rent is a big deal, but if you've frozen my mortgage and you've frozen all of the expenses that I have to keep that place up, basically, it's not that big of a deal anymore. Now, I still have maintenance, but you can kind of have a moratorium on, okay, you do minimal amounts of maintenance, and by the way, the government is going to cover, necessary stuff. You have to be careful, obviously, but within reason, we'll do it. Give people cash, and I'm obviously, if you focus it on the people who really need it, it's probably arguably better because it'll last longer. You look at whatever it was, $1.5 trillion, divide it by the people who are actually out of work for $2,000 a month, ends up being like over a year. That's a pretty big fucking deal. People could not work for a year, they'd be okay, and they could still even pay a lot of their bills. They'd still just be like going about things. Versus now, they're like on the brink of getting evicted. And even if they don't get evicted, they have this huge lump back payment that's due, which, if you haven't been working for 6 months or 9 months, how the fuck are you gonna pay 6 or 9 months worth of rent? I don't know, you're fucked, basically. You just look at this and it's so fucked up how we're doing it. And the thing that also pisses me off is, the way that we're doing these things. If you would just freeze things, we could actually get the numbers down. We could get things to a much more reasonable state in, say, 6 weeks. You just say, knock all the, look, Australia has done this multiple times. Get the shit down, and then you can open things up, and things are like, okay, it's not like safe, exactly, but the odds of getting sick are way down, the rates are way down, all of this kind of stuff. And if things start heating up again, we just do this again. Now you do that, the economic impact is much lower. And then the utility of that money that you've poured in, that now it's more than 1.5 trillion, but at that point, the utility of that money would have been much bigger. Versus now, we spent all that money, mainly just boosting, stocks, giving people like Bezos and Musk much more money as though they needed it, and leaving everybody else out to dry. Basically just a upward redistribution of wealth, the exact opposite of what you should be doing. And it's fucking disgusting. And on top of that, we incurred all that cost, which would have been a reasonable investment, arguably, to save a lot of lives and keep us from having a huge regression. But because you did that and you still opened shit up and you still had a lot of cases, now you've paid the price, but you're not getting any of the benefit. The only people really winning this are people who have a lot of stocks. And they're, by and large, the people that absolutely don't need it. If you have income from stocks, you're probably okay. Versus somebody who's actually like a bartender, just to keep going back to that example. So anyway, with that, I'm very annoyed with the maskless. I can't take it. I really, I don't know. I feel like there's just, we need a new social contract with people. We need to, and I don't just mean there. I mean, a whole lot of things. I would not advocate doing a constitutional convention especially because the Koch brothers are really have been pushing for this. The harm that they would do, the kinds of things that people would you have a Fourth Amendment at all? What would happen to the First Amendment? All of this kind of stuff. I don't know. I worry greatly about what people would do. People are not very well educated. They're not very thoughtful. A lot of people would make very bad decisions going forward. But, if we did have that, I would say this, we kind of need it. We need to go back and kind of do almost a page one rewrite and figure out, how can we, this system, it is one of the longest living democracies in the world, but it's really, really showing its age. and it's really, it's like, it's an old car, and it's still kind of going around, but the engine is doing weird things. The suspension is making like all kinds of creaky noises. None of the locks are working. The lights are kind of like, yeah. The thing is like on the verge, right? And you just look at that and you're like, this is not gonna last. Something is gonna give. And again, I go back to all these Trump people out there. I don't think you can have tens of millions of people voting for this guy, and so many people thinking, yeah, the election was stolen when he actually lost. You can't have that many people thinking this kind of thing in a country like ours and have that be stable or something that is going to be viable going forward. And simultaneously, you can't have the air quotes opposition party doing shit like, just completely avoiding the possibility of even thinking about doing some of the things that I just described as obvious and necessary. And I get, okay, you got to fight Mitch. Although I do think part of the reason that Mitch got reelected is that the fucking Democrats and the Democrats in Kentucky pushed this Amy woman who, I remember the first time I saw one of her ads and I was like, it was okay. Don't get me wrong, it was like okay, but it was also like, it was not somebody who I would go like, fuck yeah, we're gonna beat Mitch. And of course, she won the primary narrowly to somebody who I still think it would have been an uphill battle with him, but I feel like at least it's something you can get behind versus like with her, it's kind of like, I'm not saying she's not better than him, but this is the, like, right now you look in Georgia, you have two Republicans who are horrible, and then you have two Democrats who are like, why the fuck can't you go like, yeah, these are some good ones? No, you can't do that. And the thing that kills me about all of this is that you have people behind the scenes, like the people in the party, the people kind of higher up, sitting there thinking, oh yeah, we know better than all you stupid motherfuckers. We're going to do this like Republican light thing, and that's how we're going to win. And no, it's not really. I mean, you look at the House seats that we lost. All the House seats for people who were for Green New Deal, Medicare for all, and this kind of stuff, got reelected. All the House seats for people who were opposed to that stuff, or all the ones that got flipped, were people who were opposed to that kind of stuff. They were the, like Republican light people. You can't, I don't know, just as a marketing thing, you can't run as kind of like, oh, well, yeah, they are this really terrible thing. We're going to be like a slightly less terrible version. Because, first off, the people who want the terrible thing, they're not going to go for the slightly less terrible thing. They want the terrible thing. That's their whole fucking identity. And then the people who want something better, they're looking at that and they're like, it's not really, you're not distinguishing yourself. You're not giving people a reason to vote for these people other than they're not the worst fucking people in the world. And it's just, I look back at like Doug Jones's election. When this was going on, he's running against a pedophile, basically. And I wrote a bunch of postcards to people in that state. And I'm sitting there writing, and at first I wrote mostly like reasonable stuff. I started writing a couple of things where I'd get like, I can't believe that I have to fucking, I didn't say fucking, but I can't believe I have to tell you this. This guy is running against a motherfucking pedophile. Again, I didn't say motherfucking, but I'm just like, every time I would write one, I was like, the sort of like nicer, sort of more tame, yeah, you should vote for him because of this and this and this. And I keep going like, it just sort of ratcheted like this fucking mask thing. And at a certain point, I'm like, how is it that this is going to be a close election? I'm here and I have to write you postcards to beg you and plead with you to vote for somebody who's not a fucking pedophile? Like, how is that? You know, never mind that Doug Jones was kind of like, nah. But it's just, I don't know. I hate that. I hate the situation where that is like the option. I hate the fact that I had to vote for Biden. I didn't have to vote for him. I know plenty of people who didn't. But yeah, I mean, I can't do something just morally and ethically. I can't do something that's gonna help Trump get reelected. So I'm in this like fucking corner, in this box. Like, okay, I can vote for really like the lesser of two rapists. This guy who lies as fluently, more fluently in fact, than Trump. Yeah, I would say if you looked at lies per minute, I don't think Biden comes out particularly better than Trump. The difference is that Trump's lies are so brazen and transparent that you see them, you feel them, whereas Biden's lies are much more smooth. You know, he's a much better liar. Not really a compelling argument for him. Yeah, and then I don't know. I fucking despise this motherfucker. I despise the fact that I had to vote for him, and I despise the fact that the party insisted on foisting this shithead upon me. And also, like, I look at the people he's nominating for his cabinet, and I mean, you know, like the worst one, well, okay, not the worst one, the one who I've personally had the most negative interactions with, Neera Tanden, is terrible, like fucking terrible, despicable person, just awful. And the thing about her is also kind of like Biden, she's really good at putting on a fake face, you know, that sort of church smiley face where it's like, oh yeah, I'm really nice and you know, I understand. She fooled me for a little while. Like when I was interacting with her, I was like talking to her and I'm like, okay, you seem like a reasonable, nice person. Before it became clear, it's interesting how people kind of reveal themselves in time, more or less. Even the people who are good at the mask, sometimes the mask slips a little bit. Not the actual mask that you need to wear right now, but that facade that people put on. And then when you see through that facade, in her case, I was like, oh shit. You know, I pride myself. I pride myself in being a decent read of people, and it really bothered me, honestly, that she fooled me so effectively, because I just, you know, I saw her and I'm like, okay, yeah, she seems sincere, she seems decent, all this stuff, and then, you know, it comes out and it's clear, and you're like, oh fuck, yeah, no, you're a terrible person. And I will say also, this is going to be the last thing that I say now, but I always try, I'm a big believer in this idea that, you know, it's not that people are bad people, it's that they do bad things. I think that's generally true. And I still retain a lot of that. I think mostly, you know, all things being equal, it's important not to say this is a bad person, it's just a person who's doing a bad thing. But at a certain point, and I'm sorry, Godwin, but at a certain point, you know, Hitler probably is a bad person. Now, you may be able to go through his life and his history and kind of see how he got there, but he's still fucking Hitler, right? You know, sometimes people are just bad people. And I really think, yeah, I mean, a lot of the people in the Biden administration, you know, certainly, I mean, Trump and his administration, fucking evil, despicable people. Yeah. I do not think there's any way you can look at Mitch McConnell and think, oh, he's just a nice person in unpleasant circumstances. I really think, like, to the extent that people are actually evil, Mitch McConnell, I think, is pretty fucking close. You know, if evil is a thing, that kind of person, and part of it is also, like, he's completely and utterly shameless, which is also, you know, like, people talk about cancel culture and all this kind of stuff. If cancel culture was a real thing, Mitch McConnell would have been canceled a long fucking time ago. The thing is, you know, like, it's one thing to be shameless. It's one thing to just do whatever you're going to do and lie and do all this kind of shit. You may not have to feel the shame, but you should still feel the consequences of the shame. And again, I'm not saying like you should have a scarlet letter and, like have your life ruined for adultery or something that is really not a big deal. I'm not saying that adultery is not a big deal, but you shouldn't have your life ruined for something. At that time, shame was a much bigger, worse thing, objectively too far. Now, you can be Mitch McConnell and basically just go about your life. I doubt he faces any real consequences, and he certainly gets real praise for the terrible fucking shit that he does. He's responsible more than any other individual, I would say, for Trump's presidency and for his near re-election and for 3 Supreme Court seats and a couple hundred federal, all of these lifetime appointment federal judges. It's his. And honestly, even if he would have lost this year, this is one of the things also with this Amy person that he was up against. A lot of people focused on his election because he's obviously a terrible person. Even if he lost this year, his life's mission, he has accomplished this. He delivered something horrible, but he delivered it to his party and to the people who are donating to him. The Democrats, on the other hand, they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this because even though that's obviously the right thing, we don't think we can do that. We're going to back off. And I always look at them as okay, in the negotiation, you really want this. And they're thinking, well, we can't ask for that because even if we ask, I don't mean this is a reasonable thought process. This is their thought process. I want this, but I can't get it, so I'm going to ask for this, which is half of even that, which inevitably means they don't even get that. Whereas in negotiation, really what you should do is say, I want this, so I'm going to ask for this, which is even more, so I have a place to fall back to, and after I fall back, I'm still getting something that's really good and worthwhile. This is one of the reasons why the fucking ACA, and I'm not saying the ACA had no upsides. I mean, my sister, I talk about this a lot. Before the ACA, pre-existing conditions made her health insurance insanely expensive. She could afford it kind of because she's a doctor, but it was still stupid, crazy expensive. ACA makes it more reasonable. It has some good things, but at the same time, the ACA sucks hairy goat taint. And I say this having been on an ACA plan, it was more expensive and progressively more so. And it's not just, obviously the Republicans making things worse didn't help. But it's not just that, it's kind of intrinsic to the thing. It was more expensive, it covered less. It would have covered certain catastrophic things, although, I would not want to test it. If it was something that really was expensive, I don't think that I would have been okay. I don't trust that my current insurance would do that either, honestly. I feel like, probably be fucked. But, and I know people who can't even afford the ACA stuff, which I can't even blame them because when I was on it, if you don't have these catastrophic things, then, now granted, if you're making nothing, then okay, you get the subsidy and you're not really paying anything. But if you're kind of in this in-between place, you're working, you're making something, but you're not making that much, you're paying a lot, and your coverage is so shitty that for your day-to-day kind of medical needs, you might as well just be paying out of pocket. And it's a gamble that probably most reasonable people would almost take that, okay, you're not if you don't have insurance, you're not protected against a catastrophe, but probably you're not going to have a catastrophe, which inevitably means that the people that do have, if you have something catastrophically bad, puts you in an even worse position because you don't have fucking insurance, or you have insurance that's worthless. But anyway, just arguing about this for the billionth time. It's so dumb, so fucking dumb that the Democrats, bent over backwards to give the insurance industry, the healthcare industry, so much say, literally letting them write the fucking legislation, would not do any kind of a public option, gave up on that without even trying. And you look at this and you look at how other countries do stuff. There's no country that does something like this where it really works. There are plenty of countries that have different healthcare systems that work, and you can look at ones that have some form of private insurance that works. Although even in those cases, like in Germany, apparently the private insurance often not that great, but you can find them. You can find places that have a national healthcare system, or the NHS, and the NHS, it's struggling now, but mainly because the Tories keep just defunding it and trying to make it suck successfully, in order to privatize the thing. This is such the standard conservative, giant air quote conservative. To me, conservative means conserving things. This is something that's existed since the end of World War II, and you're eroding it. It's not really conservative, but they call themselves that. They erode stuff, and then at a certain point, they kind of convince people, oh, well, we should privatize it because magically all it does is pull public money into the pockets of a few individuals. It basically just takes stuff, makes it worse, and fucks over a bunch of people, but it gets a few people rich, stupidly rich, on the public dime. I despise this, and I will say this, I don't think making everything public is necessarily the answer for everything, but it does help for certain things. There are many cases where you'd be much better off, if Facebook was a public, when I say public here, I mean publicly owned, not in the sense of a publicly traded stock. If it was a company that was kind of shared by a bunch of governments through the world, and they had some kind of almost UN governing board, probably wouldn't be so horrible as it is now, and it would have some kind of accountability, which it doesn't now. Versus, at most now, you have a couple of governments can maybe give them a fine, but Facebook has so much fucking money that it's almost impossible to fine Facebook an amount that they feel. Yeah. But anyway, blathering on, gone a lot longer than I was expecting, but this is the nature of how I do these. As always, thank you for watching or listening. I will be back soon. Say Jen.